Welcome back, my students, to another episode of Comic Class. And in today's video, guys, we're going to be looking at the Shredder Strikes Back story arc, which spans from the Leonardo one-shot and issues 10 and 11 of the TMNT Mirage original run. And yeah, link will be in the description down below to check out this story arc. It's amazing, guys, and it's a fan favorite. I mean, if you've watched the TMNT 2003 show, that it was actually adapted into that series as the Shredder Strikes Back Part 1 and Part 2. And anyone that's seen that series knows that's a fan favorite. It's one of my favorite stories I've ever read. And yeah, so without further ado, guys, let's jump right into the story. Let's go. So our story, guys, starts off action-packed. We get Leonardo fighting against some foot soldiers, and it's amazing. Now, one thing you're going to notice about this story arc is there's a lot of action. Now, if you watched the last episode of Comic Class, you know that we talked about the Future Joy story arc, and in that arc, we had a good balance of story and action. There was a lot to talk about, but this video is going to go by pretty fast because most of it is just Leonardo and the Turtles just trying to survive. But let's jump into it. So we have Leonardo taking on these foot soldiers, and these foot soldiers are not playing around. We're talking about like ambush foot soldiers. You know, this isn't like one or two. We're talking about an army, and they're just coming, around and around. And Leonardo's fighting for his life. While this is happening, we get to see that the Turtles are actually getting ready for Christmas, it seems. And they're kind of like, they got the tree, they're going to set it up and stuff like that. So we're getting to see all these things while Leonardo is fighting for his life. We get to see, I think it's Raphael. He's actually chopping some of the branches off the tree to make it look nicer. And yeah, so we get to see the action continue with Leonardo fighting against the foot soldiers, fighting against people that use swords or katanas, I guess, people that use, I think, arrows later on. We get to see at the same time that, Raph and Donatello are actually enjoying themselves with April, and that they're about to put on the lights, which were modified by Donatello. So we get these little scenes going back and forth from the action to these little story moments. Now, despite what I said about this arc not having a lot of story, I have to keep this in mind that the little story we do get have this great characterization, in that they each reflect what the turtle stands for. Michelangelo is having a fun time and wants to be carefree. Raphael is doing his best to make sure everything is going perfect. He wants to be the best at doing what he's doing. And Donatello is wanting to show off his new inventions. And these little dialogues that we're getting between the action with Leonardo really showcases all their personalities really well. Now, at the same time, Leonardo fighting for his life and keeping a calm head while he's fighting this whole army of foot soldiers showcases his personality, as well as being a cool and calculated leader. At least at his best, he's like this, as well as the other turtles at their best are like they are. So yeah, that's very good storytelling with a few panels of actual dialogue. I mean, it's masterful. Now we get to see that the foot soldiers are not enough to take on Leonardo. They are wearing him down, but they aren't able to take him down. That's where we're introduced to Shredder's elite guards, I think is what they're called, and they're the ones that wear like the type of like Raiden. If you ever played Mortal Kombat, they wear like those Raiden type headgear, and they use like deadly weapons, like pretty deadly, and they're the top skilled fighters in Shredder's army. And yeah, so they take on Leonardo to kind of like take him out. Now we get to see that Leonardo gets all muddied up. Basically, they're fighting in the mud. Very reminiscent of The Dark Knight Returns. If anyone has ever read that comic or seen the animated movie, that's what it reminds me of. Not sure that came out before this or not, but it doesn't really matter. So you get to see that the ninjas, basically the foot soldiers, they stop and they halt themselves and basically show respect to somebody that's behind them or in front of them. It's not the paneling's pretty weird in this part, but we get to see that the person that they're respecting is actually the Shredder, and this just surprises Leonardo, showing that the Shredder actually is returning, that he's not dead. So you can see that Leonardo kind of like goes forward to fight against the Shredder, but the panel kind of like breaks off into all these little mini panels, destroying Leonardo, which is a really cool way to show that he's been defeated. Now Splinter basically tells the Ninja Turtles that they need to go find their brother, because this is not normal for Leonardo to be out this late. So Raphael basically says that this is probably stupid because Leo probably just got carried away with his exercises on his way here. But this is not the case, because Leonardo gets shot through the window. Like, he's thrown through the window like hardcore by either the Shredder or maybe one of the elite guard. I'm pretty sure it's not some random foot soldier that throws him that hard. So we can see that Raphael doesn't even have time to put on his headband. He goes after his brother, and this is where Leonardo reveals to his brother Splinter and April that the Shredder is back. Yeah, so the Shredder is back, and we can see that, you know, Leonardo is in no shape to fight. He took on an army of foot soldiers, he took on Shredder's elite guard, and he possibly took on Shredder himself. It's not confirmed or not, but I mean, considering how badly he's hurt, he probably did fight the Shredder and just got wrecked, which shows some development in when we get to the you know, Return to New York City arc on the next video. But we'll talk about that then. So we get to see that the foot soldiers just like barge in, like a whole army of them, just start breaking into April's apartment, slash, you know, that cellar that she used to have like sell stuff with her father. And yeah, so this leads to a whole like war on battle with the foot soldiers against the Ninja Turtles. Now they do a lot better as a team than one-on-one. Of course, you know, you're gonna do better with 4 people instead of 1 against an army, but the odds are still against them. So they're fighting their way out, and we get to see that Splinter basically takes an arrow and grabs it before it can even reach his head. Possibly the greatest moment in this whole run. Like, guys, I've read each arc, but this moment with Splinter is just so awesome. Like, I've read a lot of cool comics, you know, since I got into the medium about 2 years ago, but like nothing I think is as cool as Splinter grabbing an arrow in midair. Like that speed feat, it's crazy. But other than that, we get to see that Leonardo is just like so torn up because he feels like he's failed everybody, and that April's like trying to protect him, but she has no combat training, so like he feels completely horrible because it should be the other way around with him protecting her, but he allowed himself to get defeated, and you know, now they have to make sure that he can survive. And Splinter's kind of like taking the heat for it as well. He probably feels like he failed too in not protecting Leonardo. So eventually the Ninja Turtles, they fight their way all the way down to the cellar, and they realize when they click the lights on that the Shredder is waiting for them with an army of foot soldiers. So a battle continues to ensue. But we get a reveal that someone was hiding in the dark as well, and this is revealed to be Casey Jones, who joins the fight with the Turtles against the Foot and Shredder. And yeah, like I said, a huge battle ensues. We get a lot of cool action panels. And we get this really cool one with Casey Jones just going in and each Ninja Turtle fighting their way out of here, trying to protect Leonardo and Splinter and April. And yeah, so they're fighting, and Donatello gets this really cool hit on the Shredder. I mean, people sleep on Donatello and Michelangelo, like, for real, but they have some of the greatest moments in this original run. I mean, they are fantastic characters, that just because they're not the main two, they don't usually get the respect that they deserve. But like, you know, Donatello went in, like, he smashed his bow staff so hard it broke on Shredder's helmet. Like, you have to use a lot of force to do that. But this is where the Shredder basically gets, you know, mad and attacks Donatello, but this is where Donatello gets saved by, I think it was Raphael or Michelangelo. It probably was Michelangelo. Yeah, so basically we're just seeing this whole battle take place, and eventually the police arrive to where all this commotion is happening, because it's causing a huge commotion, and we're talking about trained ninjas fighting in this huge, you know, cellar, or basically this like antique house, and like tons of stuff are breaking. Of course, it's gonna make noise and get the police over here, so they arrive. This is where the Shredder basically tells his minions that they need to get out of there, that the police and ninjas really do not mix. So they make their escape, but before they make their escape, basically Shredder sets the place on fire and says that the Phoenix has risen and that my destiny is true, and for them to watch their bats. Now, Shredder keeps calling them Gaijin. I'm guessing that's the way you say turtles in Japanese. I have no idea, but it's a really cool panel too with Casey Jones and Raphael showing their friendship and that they both react to Shredder in very similar ways. I thought that was funny. So basically we get to see that April at the end is crying because they did escape the building, but her apartment and the cellar, which her father used to live in and work, is gone forever. I mean, it's pretty sad. Considering as someone like me, I am kind of sentimental to some of the things I own. I can't even imagine that happening, where your stuff is completely burned and just gone to ashes, basically. So yeah, that definitely hits in the feels for anyone that understands the type of connection you can have for certain items. And yeah, it's pretty sad. So we get to see that basically Ninja Turtles, April, and Splinter, they all go to Casey's grandma's house, basically like her farmhouse that she gave to Casey. I guess Casey just wasn't living there because he enjoyed city life, which again is a little bit of a character progression in showing that Casey is actually using something from his past and introducing us, the audience, to these characters and that they have lives outside of the main story. Again, very good stuff from Kevin Easton and Peter Laird. Now we can see that April has been having nightmares about what has happened in her life and to the turtles, and basically gets up and starts reminiscing about what exactly is happening to all their lives. They're all dealing with some pretty messed up stuff, and the post-traumatic stress that the army attack, with the foot, did to Leonardo and the rest of the turtles. So we get to see Casey Jones as well, and how he's interacting with people, and that's pretty nice too. Now, my favorite part of this final portion of the story arc has to be when April is talking about each turtle and how they're dealing with the grief of what happened with their brother, and that it really showed how vulnerable they actually are and how much more they have to train to get more stronger and better at handling these types of situations. Just sometimes the situation just isn't going to be fair and you have to be ready for that. And we get to see that the one that got affected the most out of all three turtles about what happened with Leonardo is actually Michelangelo. And we get to see that he isn't cracking jokes anymore. He's actually just letting his rage come out, something we never really get to see. And there's even this panel at the very bottom where he just looks like a monster. And he basically just attacks the wall of the barn and just breaks completely through it. I mean, pretty impressive. With just pure force. And it's just pretty sad. I mean, you can see it in April's face on the bottom that, to see someone like Michelangelo, which is always, the happy one in the group, actually have this moment of grief and having to realize that his brother could have died, like straight up. Like, they were in a pretty brutal fight. They're lucky the elite guard weren't there. They probably would have killed Leonardo. The elite guard would have been there. And yeah, it's pretty sad. And we get to see that Raphael basically is just keeping everything to himself, kind of like letting his rage not come forward. And that's what's cool about this, is that Raphael is the opposite of Michelangelo in that he lets his rage show. So his development doesn't come in the sense of he needs to go let his rage out on people. He has to learn how to control himself. And that's what his development will actually be. He'll become a better person with learning how to control that anger and direct it only to those who really need it, instead of just lashing out on everything. And that's why this scene, I believe, is there to show us the development of this character. I think that's what every main arc in this story was trying to tell us, is that, that these characters are going to evolve, and they're not always going to be what they were in that first issue or the first few arcs. So we get to see that Donatello basically is working with Casey Jones and trying to fix one of their old vans, I guess, or trucks. And they actually get it to jumpstart and work, and it's pretty cool. Shows that Donatello is developing a relationship with Casey Jones, despite most people probably thinking he would only get along with Raphael. Casey is showing that he actually has a lot of personality, and that he isn't bound to just one type of personality. I think that's a very good, and it shows the signs of a good writer when they understand that humans have all different types of emotions, and they don't just fall into one set group, or I don't know what you call it, like gimmick. It's just, that's not how humans are. And I think that's really cool that Casey Jones, has this moment with Donatello showing his humanity. Then we get to see that April basically had fell into some type of frozen lake, and that Leonardo actually saved her, showcasing that he's slowly getting better at trusting himself and helping people and helping himself, but it's going to take a while. But basically, Splinter tells him that April will be fine, but that they themselves have let their spirits wander, and that it is time finally for them to get back to doing what they need to do. And I think that's a really cool way to end this. The final portion of this art, the final page, I guess you could say, is just the Ninja Turtles, checking up on April and giving her some flowers. Michelangelo gives her some flowers or something like that. And I really love this ending. Now, people usually would say, you should end it with like a huge cliffhanger to get us hyped for, the Return to New York City art. I don't think that was needed. We had Splinter telling them that it was time for them to get back to work, basically showing us that they are going to go back to New York City to take on the Shredder once and for all. This was needed because this brings like a full-on circle. Now, if you remember in I think it was the Mauser story art, April invited them into her home and basically took care of the turtles when Splinter wasn't there. And this is a really beautiful scene because it shows that the turtles accept April as their family, and now they're taking care of her when she needs it. Showcasing that they're finally a full family. Even Casey Jones being there matters, because it shows us that this is our core cast of characters that we're going to get to know and love. And these are the people that will always be together no matter what story it is in the Ninja Turtle universe. And it's like that even today. I haven't jumped into 2011 yet, but I know all these characters are in there. So it's something that these are the core cast, and they did a really good job, Kevin Eastman and Peter Laird, in showcasing that and the relationship with each other and how they bounce off of each other and how important they are to each other. So I think this is a perfect ending for the Shredder Strikes Back arc, because he took basically everything from them, he brought them down, and at the very end we get to see that what brings them together is each other. Despite, you can say that's cheesy or what, but it works for this story, and it was definitely set up since the Mauser arc. So we had like 2 arcs later when we got the payoff. But overall, that's it for the Shredder Strikes Back story arc. Overall, guys, like I said, it's a fan favorite. It's hard to say what my favorite arc is in these original story arcs, the first 5, I think. But I would say Shredder Strikes Back is probably the most iconic out of all of them. We're talking about like just a very good story that has good action. I mean, the Leonardo stuff is fantastic. It introduces us to the Elite Guard from Shredder's Elite Guard. I mean, very cool design characters, are brutal, and we'll see more of them in the final arc of the story. And yeah, overall, I enjoyed every character. I thought that the character development is amazing. We're seeing the inside thoughts of these characters, how they interact with each other, what they are like when things do not go their way. I think that's very important. Too many times in stories, we make the heroes win all the time, and we never get to see what the reaction is to loss, to death, in general. Like, when things do not go your way, will your ideals, hold up? That's the question. And I think that this arc really shows us that Ninja Turtles are strong-willed, and that they are going to make their return, and they are going to fight for their city, which we'll see in the next arc. But that's going to be all, guys. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to like. That helps the channel a lot. Leave a comment down below on what you think of this iconic fan favorite story arc. Are you excited for the next video, which will cover the Return to New York City story arc? And yeah, until next time, guys, God bless you, and until the next lesson, keep on reading.
I am who I'm meant to be. I am who I'm meant to be. Over and out again. My future needed clarity, so I could see